Hello everyone. So this is the part 2 of the series of videos on Bex queries. So in this part I'm going to run some Bex queries, and I chose selection, formula, restricted key figure and calculated key figure. Now in the first part I explained the differences between selection and restricted key figure, the difference between formula and calculated key figure, and I also discussed about the info provider on top of which we'll be running the Bex queries. So let's get started. So let me introduce myself. My name is Somnath Ray. I'm a SAP Certified Application Associate and in SAP HANA, and I also have a CPA. So let's go into the system, into the query designer straight away, and let's create a new query to look at the data. So this is our info provider, so let's choose that. And okay, it's okay. So we are in the query designer now, and we will pull the dimensions over into the row first. So I chose company, so let's choose company code, and I'll choose transaction type into the row axis, and in the column axis I'll choose the key figures. Let's pick acquisition value on transactions, and I'll choose ordinary depreciation on transaction, and this is how our query will look like. So this is the preview mode. So I'm doing a transactional audit on the acquisition value for transaction and depreciation and ordinary depreciation on transaction, and uh, to just have a first look into the data. So let's save this query first, and it's asking for a name, so I'll say name it Som first query, and I'll put it inside my folder Somnath test, and I'll give a date 07/07/2014. So that's saved, and let's execute that query. So it's saved successfully, it says, and let's go into the query designer, sorry, the Bex analyzer, and let's run this, open up this query. So Som first query, and let's run that query. So we are looking at the data now. So we have the company code field over here. It shows the company code 0005, 1000, 2000, 2200, 3000, 5000, 6000, ACIA, and F100. And then we have the transaction type over here, and then we have the acquisition value for transaction column and the ordinary depreciation on transaction column. So we will perform a transactional audit on the company code 1000 because it has the highest dollar amount, and we will actually restrict the data. We will create two additional columns over here, and we will restrict the data for company code 1000 in those two columns, and we will create a formula which will give us the net asset value. Okay, so let's do that, and let's go back into the query designer. And so actually I have created that to save time on the video. So let's open up that query, and that's BW basic query, I think. So let's open that up, and let's look at that. Yes, so I have created two selections. So let's look at this selection first. So I chose acquisition value for transaction data, and I restricted the data on the basis of the characteristic company code, and for company code 1000 as we see over here. And the same thing I did, restriction with company code 1000 on the key figure ordinary depreciation on transaction, and I also created a formula over here which gives the net asset value. So let's run this query, save this query first, and so let's open up this query and see how it looks like. So we are in the Bex analyzer now, and so we choose our query, which is BW basic with today's date. So this is how the data looks like. So we see the acquisition value for transaction for company code 1000 and ordinary depreciation for transaction for company code 1000. So it pulls all the data for the company code 1000 on which we will be performing our transactional audit. And we have the net asset value column also, which is a calculated column, which is the calculated column based on the formula. And so let's go back into the system. So this is all about selection. So we have seen that there are two selections, and the data have been restricted for these two selections, and we also have seen the formula. So now we will create a new query. So let's hit new, and let's choose the info provider, and let's model the data. So we drag and drop the company code in the row axis and the transaction type as well on the row axis, and we have actually created two reusable objects which are over here, restricted key figures. So acquisition value for transaction for company code 1000. So these are two reusable objects, and these are specific to this info provider, and so we can reuse them. But in case of selection or formula, we have to create them for every query. So these are, I just dragged and dropped because they are linked up with the info provider, so it was easy for me. So let's save this query. Let's give it a name. Let's give it a name over here. Say let's choose some second query 0707-2014, and it's successfully saved, it says. So let's execute this query, and let's see how the data looks like in the Bex analyzer. So let's open up this query. So this is our info provider. Let's choose that. We are opening up this query, some second query. So this is the query, sorry. Yes, so we have the acquisition value for transaction for company code 1000 and ordinary depreciation for transaction code for a company code 1000, and this pertains to only company code 1000 over here. And so this is how the data looks like for our transactional audit. So that's all about it. So basically we have looked into 4 objects which are selection, formula, restricted key figure, and calculated key figure. So thank you for watching the second part of the video, and see you soon in the third part as well. So thank you very much. Thank you.